about it. Okay. Bring up my notes.
I definitely don't need any notes to do a Transformers movie.
Well, I got my plot summary at the bottom, if nothing else. Yeah, I know you don't need notes. Hey, Tom, I don't know if you ever heard our Transformers 2, but that's a relatively notorious one where Luke goes on an Alex Jones style rant as to why he likes Transformers so much. So this should be interesting. Okay. Tom, you've done this twice before, so I guess you remember the general beats, right?
Yeah. I'm good to go, and I remember how you do this. Yeah.
I think you came on when I was still obnoxious enough to sit around like telling everyone to shut up every 15 minutes so I could start a new iPad recording. So I've given up on that crap. So we'll at least flow it better. Zoom's nicer, isn't it? Okay, Luke, I know I don't need to tell you years, and I don't even know what year you're going to go with. So,
in the year 1969, man did land on the moon, but only because alien robots were up there.
That's the best reason ever, right?
Is that a common one, that we did land on the moon, but it's because there were aliens?
It's not uncommon. Yeah,
Okay.
or there's like weird temples and stuff on the dark side of the moon. I've heard that. I've heard that the aliens were like, we didn't expect them, but they told us to go away, which is why the missions ended.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's there's a Stanley Kubrick directed the aliens version. That one's fun, of course.
My favorite is that the moon landing was real, but the footage was bad, so they still had to get Stanley Kubrick to do it.
Yeah, actually, I think that is my favorite. That's like the best of both worlds. You get a whack conspiracy theory, and you still get to go to the moon. So
yeah.
Have you guys seen Apollo 18?
Wait,
oh,
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. What was the?
It's kind of like a conspiracy mockumentary where it turns out the moon is populated by very homicidal, like rock aliens, and they start attacking the astronauts. It's hilarious and terrifying. It's a great kind of comic horror movie. I think you guys would love it.
That sounds pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've also had I haven't seen this, but I think it's a Swedish film or something, Iron Sky, which is the Nazis on the moon.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that ended up getting like 6 sequels or something as well.
Oh, that now I don't want to see the first one. Okay.
Oh, you want to jump straight to like number 5?
Maybe. No, I'm just like I feel like if you're going to go with like weird high concept sci-fi Nazis, maybe you should like stop after one movie.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they're diminishing returns.
Oh no,
but
it's like
not a great starting point.
Doesn't Sharknado have growing concerns?
No. The Sharknado, the first one's great because the cast didn't quite realize how funny it was. And then all the sequels try and be comedies, and they're nowhere near as good.
How about Six-Headed Shark?
I haven't seen Six-Headed Shark.
Okay, because a student a few days ago, it's like, what did you do? He's like, I watched a movie. As Luke knows, you then have to ask them what movie or they won't tell you. And he was like trying to explain it, and finally got it through that it was a six-headed shark. And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, that's 2.7 on the IMDb. So anyway, this is Matt here.
This is Luke.
This is our moon sanctuary today. Actually, we don't spend much time on the moon. In Transformers 3, Dark of the Moon. No, it's Transformers Dark of the Moon. Excuse me. We don't actually say 3, do we?
Everyone puts the number in there, but none of the films have the number.
Oh, I checked. Yeah, I checked to make sure there is no number. So, yeah. Joining us, coming back for us to get into all those wild military industrial complex thoughts about Transformers is Tom Secker from Spy Culture. Hello.
Hi, guys.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
I think we have an interesting one here because if I'm reading this correctly, Luke believes he's Optimus Prime.
I am. Oh, especially when I'm wearing the mask.
Yeah.
I love wearing masks. I do the pull it down, pull it up thing, and it always feels like Optimus Prime with his little.
Oh, right. Got you. Okay.
With the Optimus Prime specifically.
You got your Transformers T-shirt. Okay.
Yes.
Whereas Tom, you said you said you're not forgiving me for making you watch this again.
No, this is something of a therapy session for me, this conversation. I do have some notes, but they're mostly questions that I'm hoping you guys are going to be able to help me with.
And of course, well, you have all the background to how we got here with the CIA, FBI. I don't know who's involved with Transformers so much. It feels like just the oorah army thing to me. But
this one, it was the military and NASA actually did quite a lot of help.
Oh, that makes sense.
Too.
Oh, right, because
sure.
they got that shuttle, getting in the booster to escape. Well, all that stuff. But
yeah.
Oh no, Luke. I guess you probably have a tale of seeing this for the first time, a tale of triumph, possibly.
Yeah,
vomit.
I saw this film 4 times in theaters. The first one, I just went and saw it at the big cinema with my then girlfriend. I think I then watched it when it came to the local cinema in my hometown, just with some pals. What I do remember is I saw it once all the way through. Then I saw it once, but the reel cut out like 10 minutes from the end. And a third time I saw it, we got there about 5 minutes late. So I would always say that I'd only seen it in theaters twice. And my girlfriend would get really annoyed because she'd sat through 2.5 hours of movie and I wasn't letting her count it as having watched the movie.
You haven't seen it yet. We have to go see
well,
it.
No, she'd still seen it once. But
no, I think I did just catch it once in theaters. I think this is the straw that broke the 3D camel's back.
Oh, I maybe I only saw it once in 3D, and I think I'm in the same boat. I was just, I think I don't need 3D, especially with the way Michael Bay moves his camera. Although having gone to 3D did force him to actually calm down the shots a little bit in this one.
Okay, that's cool. But yeah, no, for me it was it wasn't completely my choice, but I was happy to have made the choice. It was just Japanese theaters about this time suddenly started showing the dubbed version in 3D instead of the subtitled. So I guess makes sense. You don't want to have subtitles on 3D. It's weird.
Yeah, true.
So Tom, is this what the second time you've seen this then, or the first? I don't know. I imagine.
No, it will only be the second. I've never seen it in a cinema, certainly. I've never enjoyed Transformers movies enough to pay for them. I'll certainly say that much. But then again, I don't tend to pay for movies that often without giving too much away about how I watch movies. But yes, this is only the second time.
Not only did I watch this film 4 times in theaters, I've bought it on DVD twice and on Blu-ray once. So because I bought it in the UK, then upgraded to Blu-ray, and then I've since bought it in Japan.
Okay.
And nonetheless, I watched it on Netflix this week. So...
I think I actually did end up watching this one on disc. See, for me, it's like Transformers, the second one. I when we watched it, a year or two ago, I actually did kind of enjoy it, and I just remembered that being a hot mess of a movie, which it is. I was just like in the mood for it, I mean, like you said, you get in a certain mood for that one. But I did all the way to this, especially the first two, and this one as well. I kind of felt like I have been programmed to go see this movie. Like it doesn't matter if it's good, right? I have been programmed to see it because I was a child watching the cartoon, and now they're giving me this movie. So it's like, I followed my programming for this one.
See, I just thought I'm going to see a truck turn into a robot, and then his hand's going to turn into a sword. And he's going to cut another robot in half, and he's going to turn back into a truck and do a big stunt.
Yeah,
and that was enough for me.
5-year-old Matt wanted that, so it came through.
Luke never stopped wanting that.
Yeah. But it was just, like looking back, it's almost now like I'm some weird drone like being sent into the movie theater, which is part of the vibe here, I guess, really, when you think about it. So
well, the whole franchise was always designed to tap into that kind of childish nostalgia for the Transformers things. And if that's all you want to see, if that's all you want from your Transformers movie, then let's face it, these movies do deliver on that. There are plenty of Transformers in them.
I see you haven't spent any time around Transformers fans.
I don't think, except for you, I guess I haven't either.
I mean, I've been on forums and convent. The problem is the designs look very different to how they did in the 80s. And that's enough. And it has too many humans. So actually a lot of the like super fans hate these films. But it's the general public
in all of the adolescent romance subplot nonsense and the comedy with the parents and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, I think it hit the nostalgia buttons for people who played with Transformers as a kid and haven't thought about them in 30 years.
Raise his hand.
Yeah. Whereas, the mega Transformers nerds I'm familiar with, most of them really don't like it.
Let me guess, though, they still watch the films.
Yep.
No, I'm the poster child of that concept there. So, you mean the hater geeks, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Like Star Trek and the Kelvinverse, which I don't think either of us hate except for maybe that one movie, but I kind of get that. I want to take just like 3 steps back, and I'm curious, what is the movie y'all have seen the most in the cinema? For me, I think it's actually Pulp Fiction, because excuse me, it's Rocky Horror. We've done that. Okay. Second would be Pulp Fiction, where I think I saw that like 6 times. Like it would just be like Friday night, I guess we're going to see Pulp Fiction again. And our often guest Andrew, he saw it like a couple dozen times because it was in the movie theaters for like 6 months. So it's weird now to think about like how big a movie that was when it came out. But Luke, what's your most times in the theater?
Transformers 4.
4.
Just because I happened to be recently single in that one, so I could get away with going a whole bunch.
So what's your number?
Only 6.
Oh, okay, you're a 6. Tom, you said you have covert means, but I'm sure you've gotten a few theater views of something.
Well, I'm thinking I'd have to go back quite a long ways to when I went to the cinema an awful lot and would go and see films more than once. It'd have to be something like, it's either Jurassic Park or The Addams Family, and I can't remember which one because both of those are quite a long time ago. But I do remember going to see those multiple times at the cinema because I was obsessed with both films.
I just watched The Addams Family last year. My daughter was like, "Show me some horror," and I tried that, and she liked it, but she's like, "No, show me some horror." So I was still trying to like keep it kind of kiddie, but yeah, maybe she wants to be Wednesday Addams now. That's cool.
Show her the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, I've said it several times on the podcast. We did go for The Shining and Alien, so I didn't pull my punch too much after that. No. As for Transformers 3, let me just get the tail off and spoil everything. Or I like to think this is actually like a reminder for people, right? So, off to the races. Let's roll out. Roll out. There we go. Because my friend actually used to say "let's roll" for some reason.
He says that sometimes too.
Okay, then I'm not wrong. There was a lunar landing conspiracy, all right. Turns out Buzz and Neil were there to scout out the Ark, a spaceship hailing from Cybertron containing the leader of the Autobots, Leonard Nimoy. Meanwhile, the Autobots now living on Earth are just doing the global house cleaning. Next stop, Chernobyl. Optimus Prime discovers a fuel cell clearly taken from the Ark, and this leads him to discovering and rebooting Leonard Nimoy. Meanwhile, part 2. Autobot boy toy Sam Witwicky has saved the world twice, has a supermodel girlfriend Carly that he cohabitates a swank pad with, but he is still a schlub looking for a job and driving a rundown Datsun. Oh, and Carly's boss, Dylan Gould, has eyes on her as well. But it turns out that Gould is working for those evil Decepticons. See, those 5-pillar fuel cells and Leonard Nimoy were just a ruse to bring an army of Decepticons to Earth so they can combine forces to bring planet Cybertron to Earth. The ensuing violence gets the Autobots exiled from Earth. With no one to stop them, Gould kidnaps Carly and helps the Decepticons take over Chicago, which they can use as a base to summon Cybertron. Sam enters the city with the help of his army buddies, and just when all seems lost, the Autobots reveal themselves as having not actually left the planet. There's a massive battle around Chicago. Sam and crew get caught in a slowly falling building, and Optimus Prime gets super violent, taking out both Megatron and Leonard Nimoy. The Autobots are still standing to make things explode another day, even if Sam is finished with this shit. Okay, because yeah, this is the end of Sam's journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is the end of LaBouffe journey as an actor, basically.
It's one of 3 or 4 endings of Michael Bay where he's like, I'm done. I'll do one more.
People are just misunderstanding. It's like, I'm done with this movie. I finished making this particular movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after this movie, presumably LaBeouf had made all the money anyone could ever need. And then he went through like his weird, I'm going to do art phase. And then I think there was some like, he did some weird stuff with people who showed up to his art things. And then, yeah, there was all the I'm not famous stuff and the find me on Google Maps stuff.
So
was it LaBeouf who did that thing where he watched all of his own movies back to back in a cinema?
Yeah.
Which
with
is
a live stream on his face.
Yeah. Which is vainglorious at the very least, and just kind of, I mean, obsessive and bizarre. I mean, certainly he also did the really bad Indiana Jones movie.
That was around the time of, I think, the first Transformers, or at least between the first and second. It was pretty early on.
The time's been speeding up.
I thought it was more recently than that, but I could be wrong. In any rate, certainly by the end of this trio, he'd made all the money anyone could ever need, and did just seem to kind of completely go off the rails. He was also in that music video for the Sia song where he plays a kind of homeless guy trapped in a cage. And
yeah, that sounds like Shia LaBeouf shit.
I'm not going to encourage people to go watch it because I found it really creepy and disturbing. But yeah, he has done a lot of weird stuff in his time since leaving the Transformers verse. Yeah,
there is the great video with the song about Shia LaBeouf, and then at the end it pulls out and he was sat in the audience watching it.
Maybe I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, it's about like a person who gets lost in the woods and hunted for sport by Shia
LaBeouf. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, for most actors, watching their own work is considered torturous, right? So he's doing penance for us.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I think part of the idea was that he doesn't think these are good films. Like you see clips of it, and a lot of it is just him like with his head in his hands or like shaking his head.
I feel like he does this thing hardest in the second one. The second one is just like whack time, right? So
yeah, the second one he gets to have the weird brain stuff, and they clearly, I guess, his like yeah, I'll come back and do the second one if you let me just be really weird and comedic. Whereas this one, he is very much just hitting the action movie leading man beats.
Is this the only like real like lead slot for the woman who is not Megan Fox?
Well, she was literally an underwear model before this.
Yeah, I know she's a model.
That's why Michael Bay got her in. Because she did Mad Max, and she can actually act in that one a little bit.
She has,
and I don't know anything else she's done.
Yeah. So maybe it was just a dalliance, but I guess if you're in 2 major blockbusters, it's an impressive dalliance. Even, I mean, come on, I can't act. I have a movie to prove it, right?
I think she married Statham.
Oh,
so that's pretty good.
That's a big age difference.
Yeah,
I mean, you're like, yeah, that makes sense, I guess, but seems like a guy that would do that. Who else do we have other than those 2? I mean, okay, Turturro's back. Oh, Frances McDormand. I was definitely like, what is Frances McDormand doing here? I'd forgotten she was in this.
It's really odd. See, for me, as the guy who watched, probably had seen this 10 times before I'd seen her in anything else, I find it really funny when I remember that she's like a super legit actor who does like really good and important films. And I'm always like, oh, look, it's intelligence director Miriam from Transformers 3.
I feel like the thing before this that would be analogous is Dark Man, where she's like the romantic lead, and it's like it's weird because she's a really good actor trying to shoehorn herself into a romantic lead that she's not really suited for. And I don't mean this by her looks, because she was like young at the time when she did it anyway, but just the way she acts like doesn't make sense for that sort of thing. She's just like way too intense, which it is fun here. So
well, before we move on completely, I think one of the biggest flaws with this film is that they hastily replaced Megan Fox with Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, and clearly the script was mostly written for Megan Fox's character to still be there, and then B, this new one can't act very well, so she ends up being this
even
big
compared to
omission.
Megan Fox.
Yes. Well, Megan Fox, I think one of our previous guests, Stuart, put it best that she can't act in a Michael Bay movie because Michael Bay doesn't direct his actors. And that's even more glaring when it's literally just a model that he's hired to be his leading woman.
I mean, she's not asked to do much other than, shake it. So,
but like even just like delivering lines, she like stumbles her way through quite a few of them. Whereas,
I did have in my notes that in Michael Bay films, women are for being sexy or crying. And so I was very, very puzzled when Frances McDormand turned up in this film, because I was like, well, she's not there to do either of these things. Why on earth has she just didn't seem to fit in this universe at all.
Is she just there to prove that women can do other things in Michael Bay films?
Fargo and things. So
I mean, same for Turturro, right? Although I guess he'll show up in like the Zohan and stuff. So, and he's coming from weirder space. He's the Jesus and Big Lebowski. You can throw that kind of thing into a Michael Bay Transformer film. So, because he's equally prestige actor, he just does weirder stuff as well.
He's the best thing in these films for me.
I do very much. But anytime him and LaBeouf are on screen together, that's the best human interaction in these films.
They actually have some kind of chemistry and some kind of vibe going at times, and that's like everyone else feels like some actors who don't know each other performing in a movie where, like you say, they've had barely any direction, if any at all. Whereas those two seem to actually just bounce off each other naturally, and therefore you get some kind of energy between them that makes you engaged in the film. But yeah, everyone else, I've never liked any of the other characters in these movies, but he stands out, not just because his character arc is quite interesting and thematically interesting, but also because he's a good actor, and he's not phoning it in at all. I think he's actually trying in these films to be entertaining and engaging and be fun to watch on screen.
Oh yeah, he feels like he's having the time of his life.
And getting paid for it, probably. Yeah, so, I mean...
Well, the other one, this film also has John Malkovich.
Yeah. Well, he's just there to Malkovich as hard as he can, right?
But that really feels like my grandkids watch these films, I guess I'll do one appearance.
Yeah, okay.
Like when Kendrick Lamar was on a Taylor Swift track.
Yeah, he doesn't have to interact with any robots either, does he?
He has one scene with Bumblebee.
Oh, right, okay. But of course, the real fun here is the voice acting, of course. Got proper Optimus. It's Hugo Weaving is still doing Megatron.
This is the last one where Hugo Weaving is Megatron, and then they switched to Frank Welker for the other two.
But in this one, Welker is Shockwave, is it?
I think Welker's around to do like Soundwave and Shockwave and stuff.
Yeah. Soundwave is what I think I meant. I don't have them as worked out as you do. I even thought that was Galvatron at first, because I don't know, it looked like the Galvatron toy a little bit.
Well, the Shockwave?
The first time I saw Shockwave, I was just thinking at that, because that I had Galvatron toy, I didn't have the Shockwave toy, so Soundwave, whatever. See, I mixed up again already. It's like 5 seconds later.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look anything like Shockwave, other than has big gun, has one eye.
Yeah. Well, maybe I did have that one. Jeez, I don't even remember anymore. Okay.
But no, the standout new member of the voice cast for this one is obviously Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, I couldn't, as you heard, I just couldn't write Sentinel Prime, and I couldn't bring myself to do it when I could just call him Leonard Nimoy, right?
Mm-hmm. Leonard Nimoy was Galvatron in the 1986 movie, but not for the subsequent TV seasons.
Right. Did that make sense? I mean, yeah, Orson Welles' last role. Yeah, Transformers always gets like weirdly specific voice talent. I'm not sure I noticed it was Nimoy when I saw it in the theater, actually.
I did, big time.
Yeah, I don't know why, because it's real obvious. It sounds like him, right?
Sounds like him. And he even has like a couple of Spock lines thrown in there.
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, I probably, I don't know.
Maybe it's one of those where you hear the voice and you recognize it, but you never actually consciously think, oh, that's Leonard Nimoy. But because you know the voice, you just sort of assume it's fine. You know who this actor is, and you never really think about it. You know what I mean? You're not specifically trying to identify who that actor's voice is, but because it's a familiar voice, you're just like, yeah, sure, I know that. That's fine.
Well, also they don't generally have famous actors playing the Transformers in these three films.
Yeah,
like Optimus Prime is still Peter Cullen from the 80s cartoon. I couldn't tell you who many of the others are.
I did have to remind myself it was Hugo Weaving in here, like after the fact. Like I didn't consciously, even like watching it last week, I didn't like really pick up on them watching the film. I mean, I knew it, I just didn't think about it.
He literally phoned in this role. Yeah. I know at least for the first film, he literally delivered his lines over the telephone. I don't know about for the two sequels.
Nope, he had a good connection, but it didn't matter. He's a robot.
He's a robot, yeah.
But yeah, I was definitely this time around like, oh yeah, Nimoy for sure. Probably because I just read his second autobiography. That might have had something to do with it. But that's the one where he decided he was Spock as opposed to not being Spock.
I want to read his third autobiography. I'm a couple of Transformers.
Yeah. That'll have to be what Spirit written, but that'll make it better in a way.
I've got a feeling I'm going to be alone in this opinion, but I think Leonard Nimoy's Sentinel Prime is actually a good character and a highlight of this movie. Although that's not necessarily down to writing or anything he does, mostly just down to Nimoy has a good voice and it has good music.
That's it, because I mean, let's face it, he makes a whiplash surprise betrayal and then instantly starts twirling his mustache, which isn't technically like good writing.
That's usually one of my least favorite things in movies is they act normal until you get the twist that they're a bad guy, and then they completely change how they act on screen.
You need a lady.
But I guess even when he was a good guy in this, he was just walking around like a mustache twirling villain. So.
Yeah, that's the purpose of a Lady Macbeth, right? To make sure to get the villain properly twirling his mustache, which we don't see. Sentinel Prime just needs a lady.
Yeah.
Although, as you said before, a female Transformer seems to be a problematic area.
Sometimes they do it well, but not very often.
Yeah.
But the best version is when the comics are just like, some of them choose to be male and some choose to be female. It means nothing. They're robots, and just don't try and explain it. And then you get like ones that do like a 6-issue miniseries arc about how an ancient Cybertronian scientist experimented with adding gender to the species, and how RC is a tortured soul because she's forcibly transgender or something.
Yeah, that's getting to the Satan territory, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you have crash landed on Earth and need to assume the form of something, what are you going to transform into?
Helicopter.
You're a helicopter. Okay, Tom, how about for you? Oh, sorry, Luke, did you want to?
This is a helicopter. It moves around the best, right? I can go anywhere from a helicopter.
Okay. Tom, what is your transformation?
Motorbike, just because they're cool.
Okay, I'm going with the cool factor. I'm gonna go into a Fender Telecaster guitar, also because I want to be one of those Transformers that transforms into something like they're a big transformer. Because in these movies, like the cassette tape, like transforms into a small robot, right?
You're thinking like 80s cartoon where they just completely change size through camera trickery when they transform.
Right. I want to be like a full size transformer, but then I'd like turn into like an electric guitar.
Okay.
I guess I could turn into a giant one that another transformer could play, but not a human. I don't know. That I guess that defeats the purpose of hiding yourself. So
To be an art installation.
I was about to say I live at the Hard Rock Cafe in that case over the front door. So but yeah, this is design wise 2011 is a weird spot where like every movie had the exact same climax.
Okay, no, let me clarify. This movie came out and then every movie had this climax.
Okay.
Just like the first film, every film of the past 10, 15 years has ripped off the visuals of Transformers and not enough people give it credit. Like every space alien and spaceship and robot in every film of the last 15 years has just been a Decepticon with the same design, the same sound effects.
Yeah.
And then, every film for like 5 or 10 years there had Big Blue Beam fight in city.
Blue Beam, right? My first line here is my first note. Hey, they stole those sound effects from Transformers.
Yep. The most heinous was the first Avengers film because it came out a year after this, and you could easily cut together their two climactic battles, and you wouldn't know which shot was from which film unless
exactly.
you saw Optimus or Captain America on screen, basically.
And then you could even throw in shots from Winter Soldier's climax. In fact, I was like expecting that whole like on the ship thing from Winter Soldier. I realized it was Winter Soldier I was thinking of. So, but yeah, you could those three films you could kind of cut together. So, and Winter Soldier would be like 2 years later. So they just, I guess Marvel is the real Nimoy in this case. What I guess we've gotten off of this particular one. I feel like the climax has to of these big movies now has to like, well, it has to be in like a multiverse, doesn't it? It has to be in another dimension now.
Well, the second movie definitely suffered because its climax was just in a desert.
It's some pyramids there.
The first one, this one, and pretty much all subsequent ones. Oh no, not so much the fifth one. It was just like, oh, the climax works better in a city because you want to see the Transformers smash stuff.
Yeah.
The pyramid bits were cool, but then
what's like the one thing that you were saying, the one flaw with Kong Island, Skull Island, was it didn't have the city smashing scene, right? Which I guess you later.
I still like that film a lot.
Oh, same here. But
for me, the perfect Kong movie has to be, taken out of his element.
Yeah.
For a bit.
So maybe that's kind of what we're getting to a certain. Yeah, I guess the second one does that. I mean, I feel like Transformers in the desert are a good fit, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just when you're in like just a war environment like that, you sort of lose track of the fact that Transformers are big. A part of the fun is that it's a big robot stomping around
with lots of urban warfare. I guess this really did push they had to get their army guys in. I'm sure Tom will have a few words about that in a minute or three, but
yeah, the army are especially shoehorned into the final act of this one. Don't really do anything useful.
Yeah, because when they show up, is because those guys are like in all of these movies, or at least the first three. Do they keep showing up?
I think none of them are in 4, and then Lennox comes back for 5.
Okay, so you even have names there. I'm just like, oh, I remember that guy's in another movie. So, like the only thing I remember from the 5th is still the singing butler robot. So I forgot everything else about that movie, but I do love the singing butler robot. So
you mean you forgot that in that film Cybertron plugs into Stonehenge like a socket?
I forgot that because of the Matt Smith Doctor Who episode, where kind of the same thing happens. So I think about the Doctor Who episode first.
This one also overlaps with some Doctor Who episodes because around the same time, they did a Doctor Who episode where it was all about the Apollo landings being used for some sci-fi trickery. And also, around the same time as this episode, Doctor Who did an episode where a planet is pulled into Earth's orbit. I think it was Gallifrey. And I remember Stuart pointing out that between the original Transformers cartoon episode that did this big budget movie, and the supposedly real sci-fi Doctor Who episode, the only one that actually acknowledges the fact that gravity would be affected is the cartoon. In the cartoon, it causes like tidal waves and earthquakes and stuff all over the planet. Whereas in this and in Doctor Who, it's just like, yeah, there's a planet there, it's fine.
Yeah, I think I had a note about that. Oh, but then we have to have all that insane fake physics with the skyscraper. So
yeah, that skyscraper scene, it's cool for a bit, and then it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
Michael Bay was really proud of his idea of a tilting skyscraper scene, and it's like, this is way too long and doesn't have any Transformers in it. Let's get back to the cool stuff.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't really have anything to do with the plot. Like nothing happens because that building half falls over. It has no real like consequence in the unfolding battle, as far as I recall. It's just a kind of intermission in between that final battle, so we can have the people falling around in the building.
But I'm not a big fan of the stuff should only happen, it affects the plot argument in a film this dumb.
Here, no, sure. But it's like if when the top of that building falls off, something happens, you've then justified your previous 7 minutes of pissing around with the building falling over.
Because they do a thing where Optimus is like trapped for part of the battle and has to get out. Like that could have been more directly tied into the building thing, right? Rather than just
that's
like
what I mean. There's just
hit some cables or something. No, I'm taking the piss. Your point does stand. Like,
I'm just saying that there must have been an easy, cheap way in which they could have tied it in, just so that they gave themselves that excuse, rather than it just being about Michael Bay going, "Oh yeah, wouldn't it be cool if like the building kind of half falls over and then everyone tumbles down like this, and then they fall out the other end, and then it sort of shifts back, and then they fall out the other side, and it's just like, give yourself a reason to do that because it's easy enough to do." But I don't think Michael Bay is that good a screenwriter or cares that much. I think he just gets so overexcited with the spectacle that he just goes, "Oh, who cares? No one will even notice."
A scene like that would have been amazing in, for example, a Die Hard film, where it actually does stick with the characters and make you feel the tension, and things build and mean something. I say a Die Hard film, the one good Die Hard film at the start of the series that did things like that. If partway through Die Hard the building had started toppling, you'd have really felt it, and it would have really meant something.
I'm gonna justify the entire sequence because there's just like a 5-second shot, and they've already had some insane gravity bending stuff happening with the building, and they go on the floor, and I just noticed this time around that the entire office staff is still just there working.
I don't remember that.
Like everyone was like kind of just at their desk, and it looked like they were just now noticing that there'd been like a battle raging around them for the past few hours. So
these films do that a lot, where the battle would have been going on for like 30 minutes of screen time, and they turn onto a new street, and it's like everyone there has just noticed the battle is going on.
Yeah, I think the building had already had some shred, and there's just like there's several dudes just like, and ladies just like sitting at their desks like they need to finish the report first.
Which for the most part this film doesn't do, because it does quite a cool job of like, when the Decepticons show up, it's like semi-War of the Worlds apocalyptic stuff where they like conquer Chicago and put the ring around it. You see people like huddled in stairwells and stuff,
trucked out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, do you see people being skeletonized? I mean, this one almost creates some like stakes and stuff for that part.
Yeah, I think with this movie, like, impressed people as in had an impression on them that could be good or bad, but just by having such an out there climax, because the first one is just like what some robots punching each other on the city street, more or less, right? I think they climb a building a bit too, but this is like your big sandbox video game climax where like all of the cities in play, which that they get it a little mixed up in this because there's so much going on, and because they have such a large stage for their robotic battling tomfoolery.
Well, also this one, it really felt like a conclusion and a climax, hence why they really didn't know what to do with 2 more films.
Can someone explain to me how this plot is supposed to work at the end, whereby they're warping their home planet into Earth's atmosphere, but their home planet is so much bigger than Earth? So how is that supposed to
I think in Earth's atmosphere is just a dumb line. It's not going to be in the atmosphere. They just want it close so they can send human slaves over there. Okay, which again doesn't make sense because I don't think there's oxygen on the planet. So they're going to put all these people in spacesuits and they're going to go and somehow be useful as laborers compared to the giant robots they're working for. It's utter nonsense.
Okay. I'll simply accept that that's that. The other question I have you seen Moonfall? Because if you want to see a movie...
That's the Roland Emmerich one, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely... I mean, it's terrible, but brilliant. I think you'll love it because it's like every single different theme and idea that has ever occurred in a Roland Emmerich film compressed into one. So Excellent. You really do have, like, you know, the military are planning to nuke the moon and just prevent it from crashing into the Earth at the same time as you have tidal waves crashing all over the place, at the same time as you have NASA launching a rocket to the moon to try and save the Earth, at the same time as you get the idea. It's so intense and so thematically dense as an experience to watch, while simultaneously being a god-awful, schlocky, you know, disaster action.
It didn't seem to get really much of a release. Like I found out it existed like after it had been out for a month. It didn't seem to come out in Japan at all.
It got virtually no marketing. I can only assume the people who financed it didn't want to put up any more money to promote the movie because they'd already blown $100 million making a fairly terrible film that they'll never see a return on. But as a curiosity, it's well worth your time. I was quite taken by the experience of watching Moonfall.
Once I found out it existed, I was dead keen to see Roland Emmerich's The Moon Falls Down movie.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to see that?
Yeah. The big budget, gritty reboot of Chicken Little. But the scene for me, which doesn't make sense in this film, during the big climactic battle, they suddenly have the Autobots have all been captured. And it's like, how? When? Like, I don't believe for a second Sideswipe, this like psychotic robot slicer, would just surrender. But again, they could have easily included a line where it's like, oh, because they still think Sentinel Time can be reasoned with, they went and tried to talk to him and got captured. But they don't bother. They just, 1 minute you're seeing them battling, and then the next minute, oh, 3 Autobots have been captured. Because they wanted to do a scene where it looks like they're going to be executed and they escape.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You can get that cool effect, or you can pony up the bill for a rewrite, you know, or a punch up. So they made their choice.
The weird thing is, people always talk about the second movie being like disjointed and messy. And in terms of like pacing, it is. But every scene in that film is explained and follows on from the previous scene. Whereas this film, pacing-wise, works really well. You know, you open with just, there's like a little bit of a mystery, then you have a little bit of a spy caper, then that segues into they're banishing the Autobots, so in that the baddies take over, and you get the third act where the goodies win. Brilliant. But the individual scenes don't really make sense. They often do just cut to this idea would be cool.
Well, I also found there was quite a few jarring bits of editing where there's in the midst of a scene where there's human dialogue and there's one line where one of the bots says something, and so they have to have a little bit of back and forth with one of them, and it's clearly been shot on a different day on a green screen and then just spliced in the edit, and it just felt really discontinuous in some moments.
There's the other particularly bad one where the first time Megatron transforms, they have like a shot of the truck, and then for no reason at all, they cut to a slightly different shot of the truck. Like the effects team had given them like their sample version of Megatron transforming, and Michael Bay was just like, fuck it, we'll just use that.
Doesn't he use explosions in previous movies too, or something?
Oh yeah, then there's one shot of a car being crushed from the island, which they just chuck into the car chase here. I will say that I love that car chase.
Where the arrival of what's his name, the evil robot, the head of the evil robot gang,
Sentinel Prime,
Megatron.
Megatron.
Megatron. When he first arrives, the sequence, the landscape around him keeps shifting from being grassland to desert. And it keeps cutting back and forth to like some elephants stood in a grassland, and then it cuts back to him and he stood in like bare desert, which is supposed to be only about 100 feet away. And it cuts back to lush grassland. It's really confusing.
It's like Michael Bay thinks Africa is the size of like, I don't know.
A park?
Yeah, like a Longleat Safari Park.
Well, if you remember in the last movie, they're at the National Air and Space Museum. They walk out and suddenly it's like
they're in like a mountain range in the desert.
Yeah.
Well, it never explicitly tells us they are in Africa. So maybe Megatron really is just hanging out in a safari park somewhere where they've got 3 different climates like meters apart.
The lions are more chill there.
Like, all we're missing is the one shot where it's just like a family of 5 who are looking at the elephants and suddenly Megatron shows up.
A feral tiger would be like a mosquito for a Decepticon, right? I mean, it would still be kind of annoying.
Well, it wouldn't be like a mosquito because it can't like actually bite them. It would just be like
those caterpillars that get us at the temple.
Yeah, just a bug that's just on you but not doing anything.
Yeah, okay.
I guess this is my moment to do this. I had a terrifying bug experience at the weekend. So I went hiking as I do, and I was up in the mountain and I saw a bear. Luckily, I was wearing my bells like you're supposed to, so the bear ran away from me. But it was pretty small. I thought, oh, that might mean Mummy Bear is around, so I should probably turn around. And I start heading back down, and along the path I need to take is one of those big orange Japanese murder hornets the size of my nose. So I'm like, oh shit, back up a little bit. I'm watching it. I see it sort of land on top of the branch. I'm like, okay, I think I've got enough courage to walk under this tree. Get down there. There's actually 2 of them. There's one on top of the branch and one underneath. And I guess I do watch too much Michael Bay because briefly it occurred to me, I have got deodorant and matches in my bag. Should I make a flamethrower? But I didn't. I did the sensible option, and I just went off the path and sort of scrambled through the bush to get around the section where I had to walk through the 2 hornets.
So the main question I have for you is, will you fight the bee in a steel cage?
I've punched a bee before.
Okay.
I don't particularly want to fight one of these Japanese hornets, but if a Patreon puts up enough money, I will fight one in a steel cage.
Okay. I guess we should start to pump up that oorah aspect. And Tom, you mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about your new documentary, which seems like the way to dovetail into that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. I mean, people who've listened to me on your show before will be familiar with my work on spyculture.com about how all of these different government agencies work in Hollywood. And we recently I co-produced a documentary called Theaters of War. You can find it, or at least you can find the pay-per-view option on the homepage of my website. And it gets into primarily the Department of Defense and the CIA in Hollywood. And Transformers does come up quite a few times in the documentary because it's one of those films that features an awful lot of military hardware without necessarily being really ostentatious about it. They don't necessarily feature right in the center of the action, but there's a lot of it in the background in one way or another. Slightly less in this movie, to be fair. But like you say, they do just shoehorn in the military guys from the previous movies because they kind of need someone, and they sort of wanted some kind of military character in this film, and so that's why they're there. And when you read the documents on Transformers, some of them are hilarious because they kind of list all of the different like vehicles, the different aircraft and tanks and what have you that were going to appear in the movie. And they were so proud of this. They were so happy about this. That's what's really at stake for them in these kinds of movies. And it's why, I mean, I guess the point that I'd like to make is just how weird it is that a sci-fi movie, a sci-fi adventure movie that's quite childish, ultimately, that's part of its appeal, has become this very big vehicle for promoting the military, promoting military technology. and I guess by extension, promoting the enormous budgets that get spent on all of this technology. I mean, that's kind of why they want to showcase it, is to say to people, this is where your money has gone. This is what you're spending it on. Look at this fantastic aircraft flying past. And it's sort of, there's something quite insidious about that, because like you say, this is a really dumb movie. It's supposed to just be a dumb, fun movie. Let's be honest, it's about like alien robots. It shouldn't be at all serious, and it shouldn't even be grounded in the real world. It should be absurd and fun and escapist. And yet it's basically only really because of people like the American military that it is kind of, I guess, in some way grounded in the real world, or has some kind of messaging about the real world, rather than just being a fun adventure about some robots, which is what it should be. It should be as innocent as that, because that's the good part of it. But of course, Michael Bay has a huge hard-on with the American military and basically works with them on almost every film that he makes. So here we are.
Something that's weird about these films is the only actual Transformers that become military equipment are always bad guys.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a form of intimidation propaganda. They want to say, look how badass our technology is. Look how much better it is than, the Chinese or the Russians or whoever else it is that might be sort of by comparison. And of course, these films do show in all of those countries as well. So there is an element of getting through to those audiences of, just how dangerous and intimidating the American military is and how they shouldn't mess with them. So I guess that's part of the idea behind all of that.
Yeah, like, of course, the alien would choose to be an American F-22. It wouldn't want to be a sissy foreign airplane.
Yeah, it wouldn't want to be a Chinese MiG, because they're kind of old-fashioned now. They're not so cool anymore. No, you want to be the most latest, up-to-date, terrifying, destructive, killing machine that you can be.
I find it the sequel, which does have like a big, the CIA are literally the baddies in the fourth film. Suddenly it's the Chinese military that's funding the movie.
No, for me, that's kind of like the double bluff. Like, I was like, oh, you guys got me. You're selling me back my childhood. And then, I'm seeing the forest for the trees, not seeing the forest for the trees, right? Because since I've already figured out they've got me buying a ticket simply because they're appealing to 5-year-old Matt, maybe a lot of the military stuff did kind of like go unnoticed. I'm like, oh, I already figured it out, which I kind of didn't, I mean, the first Transformers came out right at a time where I guess I could have joined the military. I mean, it didn't convince me to do that, but maybe it convinced someone to, get into some oorah. I don't know.
I'm sure there's a generation of kids who grew up watching those films. It gave them the idea the army are cool, and they went and died in a pointless war. These films definitely have blood on their hands.
I was a Boy Scout, Cub Scouts especially. Everyone was going around, and you had to choose one of the Top Gun pilot names, right? I mean, that's an obvious one,
Were you Goose?
Probably. Yeah. I think it was at a point where, like, it's like 7-year-olds, like, maybe I hadn't even seen the movie at that point, so I just had to learn about it vicariously. I mean, I've seen it at some point, but yeah. I'm sure we had some Transformer stuff too. Oh no, we tried to build the Ark in my living room. That's what happened. The animated one.
Nice.
In my memory, it worked, so I don't know.
Well, that is one of the problems with the military being involved in something like a sci-fi movie, is that they are supposed to be vicarious fantasies that appeal to your inner child. It's just kind of wrong to me that they use it as a means of trying to recruit people into real life wars and real life militaristic and misadventures. Because these movies could have been. I mean, I know it's. I kind of hate Michael Bay's absence of directing style. I don't like his editing style because it's very much he came up through doing car adverts, and you can really tell that watching his movies. They're shot and edited very much like adverts.
Well, there's a big old scene in this film that's basically a car advert.
Like 5.
Yeah.
For the Datsun.
I'm thinking of the bit where they go to Carly's boss's car museum and it shows off one of the cars while also panning up her body.
That's okay. That's pretty car commercial, guy. You got it. Here's something that Luke, you and I noticed. Because in the documentary you have a lot of Top Gun stuff, and of course Maverick is coming out, and that's interesting. But we noticed the director is like a sci-fi guy. He did Tron Legacy, Oblivion, and now he's doing Maverick. And we're like, that's kind of weird. Just mentioning shoehorning sci-fi. We're shoehorning the sci-fi director into the Navy pilot film. So,
I mean, I think it's just that he's a Tom Cruise guy rather than anything else.
That could be it. But I was wondering if they were looking for some, some sci-fi whiz bang to put into the new movie. But yeah, I guess it's not. Is it out? Maybe it's about to be out.
It's out next week.
Okay, so I guess it's too early to make comment on that. But
yeah,
that did make me curious. Like, what kind of approach is this going to be? So
I can't imagine it will have the huge impact on naval recruitment that the first one had.
Well, you never know. It could. You could be surprised. Oh, I lost my train of thought. It went away again. Choo choo.
I guess so the NASA element of this one. Like,
oh yeah, that's what we were originally going to go whack on that. This actually doesn't have as much moon. It has the last shuttle, which I guess, when did the last shuttle actually launch? It was about 2011, wasn't it?
Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember it live stream being like,
I should watch this. It did have Buzz Aldrin show up.
Yeah, that was weird because
I get the impression Buzz will just do anything.
Oh, he looked pleased as punch to be there.
So. Oh yeah. He loved meeting Optimus Prime.
Didn't have to punch anyone in the face that day.
I bet he was disappointed when he got there and it turned out Optimus Prime is CG. He thought there was going to be a big puppet for him to fist bump.
Well, in Japan, you get the life-size Gundam now, so that's nice.
Another point that I'm just going to rip off from Stuart. These films end up portraying Obama way worse than they ever did Bush. Like, the first film has like a comedy little spoof scene of George Bush, but the second and third ones both have Obama trying to banish the Autobots.
He doesn't like large robots.
Yeah.
He liked the small robots, the droney ones.
Oh yeah, he loved using small. Oh, that's another thing that's fucked up about this film. At the start, the Autobots are just like executing humans for the US government.
Yeah. Like I said, they're doing.
I don't think they ever did that in the comics or the cartoon.
But I put the global housekeeping one. Right
there. Yeah. You mentioned it in your thing, but yeah, it's so unnecessary and like, if you actually think about it for more than a second, super fucked up.
Yeah, because Iron Man straight up tells them no in the movies.
Yeah,
like, do that. He's like, no, and they have to build their own, of course. But yeah. But yeah, that is kind of the fascist Autobots. Who's the real? They're all evil robots in the end. Well, again, Optimus Prime gets into like such a rage, hate, violent spurt at the end, which is awesome to watch, like you said, but it seems rather unheroic of him.
I mean, at least he doesn't tell anyone to give me your face in this one.
Yeah, I just thought, Optimus seems a bit killy for
this. He
one.
does. When like Sam asks him, what's your plan to fight back? He's like, oh, no plan. Disappears. The next time he sees him, he says, we'll kill them all.
He made his plan.
Yep.
Okay, right. Optimus is not showing that sharing spirit. Everyone's a murderer today.
I do like the sort of human baddie they shoehorn in, just because he does such a good job of being really unlikable.
Yeah.
Like, sexy billionaire hitting on my girlfriend, and I get to kill him with a big rock at the end. That's some audience wish fulfillment.
I believe he'd just come off the TV show Nip Tuck, where he'd been kind of a swarmy bastard. So it was like he'd been stewing in that particular smell of juice for several years. By this point.
I thought he was a Grey's Anatomy guy. I knew he was some sort of TV doctor.
No, we used to, yeah. used to get blazed and watch Nip Tuck. That why did that happen? Okay.
Seems like he thought he was going to be the next George Clooney.
Yeah. Oh, this was he chose the wrong movie, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean,
should have been
so
Batman.
did George Clooney, but somehow George Clooney bounced back.
Well, he started directing. That helped probably. Yeah, Confessions of a Dangerous. Actually, he's barely in that, is he? But he directed. It's a good movie. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Geez, that had to come on your radar at some point, Tom.
Well, yeah. I mean, the guy that the movie is based on, Chuck Barris, in his autobiography, claimed that he actually was a CIA assassin. So the whole question is, was he? Is that actually a true story or not? I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know, and he's dead now, so we'll probably never find out.
It seems more reasonable in 2022 somehow than when I first saw the movie.
It does, doesn't it? I think at the time it came out, a lot of people found it fairly risible, but on reflection, it doesn't quite seem so strange. I mean, just to go back to your point about how it depicts different presidents, Michael Bay has made a number of movies that were clearly designed to illicit right-wing approval, let's say. I mean, his Benghazi movie came out just months before the 2016 election, and obviously the Benghazi scandal was one of the big beating sticks for the Clintons, so, well, Hillary Clinton in particular, and he denied that this had anything to do with politics or anything like that, as Hollywood always does when it does these things. But
just as Comey did.
Exactly. You know, everyone always says, oh, no, I'm not making propaganda. I'm not making a political move. And I'm not playing any kind of game or making political hay here, but they actually are all the time and they know it.
Well, there's no such thing as something that's not political.
Well, certainly not where you're like depicting the president, the military and things like that. I mean, how can you argue that when you're, the government are playing a fairly central role in your plot, that your movie isn't in any way political? Yeah.
Well, you could feel you're not making propaganda, and on a more subconscious level, you're still doing it.
Well, if you're part of a society and making a film about that society, it's propaganda for someone.
Well, I was hearing someone recently make the point, like, that if there's the idea like, there's the elites out there and they're really smart and they're screwing with us in every way and they're doing evil stuff, and then there's like, no, these people at the top are super incompetent and all this horrible stuff is happening because of incompetence. Now, the point was, does it really matter which it is?
Well, the thing is, I think a lot of people cling to conspiracy theories because they want to believe someone is in control of all this.
Yeah.
Even if it is the evil, satanic, demonic elite.
The point being,
whereas, the real thing is, it's the systems that are fucked up and keeping us down. And like the people we see as at the top don't necessarily have any more agency within the system than the people we see as at the bottom.
Right.
And I think there is a difference in terms of, if you genuinely believe that, like, Hillary Clinton is a space demon and that she's the reason everything's fucked up, then you can imagine deposing her and fixing everything. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you think it's just like, oh, we've built a country which exists to keep the poor poor and the rich rich and to fuck us all over, where do you begin fighting that?
Yeah, I think this was more like the individual, kind of like, I guess, the karma thing. Like, if you're doing something because you're evil or doing something because you're stupid, it's the same result. So you're just as culpable. Incompetence isn't an excuse.
I didn't know it was illegal. It's not considered a valid legal defense.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, just a fun moral rabbit hole to jump into for a minute or three. I
will say, one of the things that I do enjoy about this franchise, and I know I keep saying that I really hate these films and then saying, oh, there are some things I enjoy about them, but that's one of the problems with these movies, is there are little things in them that almost anyone can enjoy. I think that's one of the reasons they're quite popular, is there is a little bit of something in there for almost everyone, unless of course you're a woman. But the opening montage of this film, I actually think is really good.
It's well done, yeah.
It's well done. It's well paced. It ties together a bunch of sort of weird, interesting, different things, moon landing, Chernobyl, what have you. It establishes some kind of stakes. It's a little bit of tease for the people who are a little bit more conspiracy minded, or at least like that kind of content being in their silly sci-fi movies. And it was kind of downhill from there. to be honest. But I do like how they incorporate some of this stuff. I do like how in the second one, like the guy who's like Homeland Security in the first one, he becomes the conspiracy theorist. He becomes the online whack job in the second movie. And they're obviously playing on that and playing up to that. So because they know that some of the people in the audience actually kind of quite like that content, even if it's just for entertainment, even if they don't necessarily buy into it politically, they still like it. So it's fun to have a character like that in there. So Michael Bay's films are occasionally in moments redeemable, I think.
Michael Bay is an absolute master of the montage. Like the montage in this, the montage of the Autobots landing in the first film.
That's very good, yeah.
Yeah, he's very good at just music and visuals. But again, car commercials. It's when there's dialogue that he maybe doesn't do so well.
Well, or story.
Yeah.
Or drama. Or comedy. Yeah, romance or something like that. If there's just stuff happening and a feeling that he's trying to generate, he can handle that.
That's why I think the perfect Transformers movie would just be a 3-hour-long battle scene between robots with zero dialogue.
You gotta have Optimus saying something.
Oh yeah, he can say his like speeches that sound cool and don't necessarily make any sense.
Yeah.
Today,
some kind
in the name of freedom, we take the fight to them.
Yeah. All that Braveheart nonsense. Yeah. You can throw in a bit of that just to give it some shape.
Although
I think you're right. If they stripped out the people, or at least the vast majority of the people, these would be better movies.
Although the reason you think these films have terrible writing and stuff, then you go and play the Transformers arcade games that they made in the last few years, and they've got a bad Peter Cullen impressionist doing even worse versions of these Transformers speeches. And it's the worst thing you've ever heard in your life.
Or the best. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was thinking with the having the conspiracy whack job in the second one or whatever, like we were talking last year, Godzilla versus Kong like really jumps, head first into that. Which
I think a lot of things try and jump head first. I think we brought this up in Kong as well. They jump in with like, here's a guy who's a conspiracy theorist nut job, but they don't have the balls to commit to like most of these guys are like big racist assholes. So they have it as he's a black guy and he actually is like on the fringe of society and being like, because obviously conspiracy theorists like to believe they're the oppressed minority. And they never are. Whereas the films, he actually is like an oppressed guy. They never have the balls to have, here is a guy who believes all of this weird nut job stuff. And the reason he believes that is because he's a white supremacist. Whereas that is the vast majority of these actual people.
They do the exact same thing in Moonfall. One of the main characters in that is kind of a conspiracy theorist or like paranormal theorist or something in that realm anyway. And he's the one who's saying, the moon's hollow, the moon's this kind of alien megastructure. And oh, look, it's shifted on its trajectory. We need to really be paying attention to this. And no one's listening to him for about 15 minutes because it's Roland Emmerich. He moves on quickly. But he's, a perfectly nice guy. He's friendly. He's quite likable. He's quite funny. There's nothing kind of insidious or nasty about him. And then it emerges that NASA, kind of fitting in with this movie, had actually known about this about the moon ever since the moon landings back in the 60s, that they'd realized that the moon was a hollow alien megastructure all the way back then, and that they'd covered it up. And so they literally wheel out Donald Sutherland to essentially repeat the thing that he did in JFK in the Mr. X scene, where he kind of lays it all out and explains the kind of background to the JFK conspiracy. And it's such an obvious nod to that bit of cinema. But in this, he's in a wheelchair in like a NASA basement in the archive, and he's only there for one scene. And I think he did it in one take, to be honest, because it's not very good.
I'm actually a little disappointed to learn that in Moonfall, the moon is an alien superstructure. I found it much funnier to think it's literally just the moon, but the moon is falling down.
No, there's a whole conspiracy involving ancient AI that's trying to wipe out all organic life in the universe, and there's a lot to that movie.
Got convoluted. I was saying until you said Donald Sutherland, I was like, well, you're also explaining the plot or the beginnings of 2012 and The Day After Tomorrow.
Yes.
It's the same thing.
And to some extent, Jeff Goldblum's father in Independence Day, and the guy who was kidnapped by aliens in Independence Day.
Yep. Well, and Daniel Jackson in Stargate.
Okay, so we
and Nick Coppola in Godzilla. So,
and to some extent, the president in White House Down, he explains that the whole attack on the White House is being orchestrated by the military-industrial complex.
Is Roland Emmerich a conspiracy guy? Huh.
I think so.
Luke, is there anything else you really need to scream out about giant robots this time around?
In terms of giant robots specifically, car chase is really cool. I do think, at least in a very superficial way, the dynamic of Sentinel Prime and Optimus Prime is more interesting to watch than the villains in the previous two films. Like The Fallen was nothing. The first one, Megatron, wasn't really anything. Here he was kind of interesting as a villain. The next film has a much cooler villain, though. The big final battle is good, but maybe goes on too long even for me. The money shot of that fight scene where Optimus is flying in and chopping up a whole bunch of robots was in all the trailers, and that is the moment that made me stop watching trailers for Transformers films. And not on the giant robot tack, but I mentioned this briefly, the Rosie Huntington-Whiteley's character, Carly. A, she works in a car museum. Megan Fox's character had been a mechanic the whole time. B, there's a scene at the end where she talks to Megatron and affects the final outcome of the final battle by convincing Megatron to do something. But this version of the character had never met Megatron apart from once. Whereas had it actually been Megan Fox's character, Michaela, who'd been through all of this stuff with the previous two films, it would have made sense that she could actually have a conversation with Megatron and convince him to do something. And the third thing on that is, I'm stealing this from Stuart Webb, but the first two films, Sam never rescues the girl. She always rescues him. So the fact that in this film, she's just there to be a damsel in distress wouldn't have been so bad, because it would have been he's finally stepping up and he's being she'd always been the one with agency, and Sam had just been dragged through everything. So it would have been a big reversal. Whereas because it's a brand new character who hasn't done anything, she's literally just there to be his girlfriend who gets kidnapped and rescued.
How would you feel if they had recast?
I think recasting would have been better than making it a different character.
Yeah, we lived with it with Savick and Star Trek, didn't we?
Yeah, lots of films recast characters. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But it seems to be becoming less and less popular now because films love to have all this continuity. Well, Star Wars would rather spend millions of dollars CGIing Mark Hamill than just cast another soppy blonde guy.
Yeah.
Well, they did that too. They just put a bunch of black dots on his face, so then they can make him look like Mark Hamill.
Yeah. Well, because they seem convinced that Solo flopped because it changed the actor, rather than because it was marketed badly and was an unnecessary film.
And was probably poorly conceived, poorly written, and they abandoned production halfway through and then reshot 2/3 of the movie with a different director, so it all came out a bit incoherent.
But look at Donald Glover's Lando, and you can see that recasting actors is actually fine if it's done well.
Yes. Look at the James Bond franchise, which is the fourth biggest movie franchise of all time and one of the longest running. They've had 7 different people play the lead part. You know? Look at Batman.
Spider-Man just did a film where it celebrated having 3 different Spider-Mans.
Yeah.
No, but I
mean, that's a perception of studios that doesn't actually exist in audiences, to be honest. I think audiences will accept it as long as it's done well.
But the Batman and Spider-Man and Bond are specifically, they're kind of reboots each time. This is the modern MCU, everything is one big continuity thing. They feel like they can't recast the actors because it has to feel like every movie is just episodes in one ongoing TV show. But again, I think you're right. I think audiences wouldn't care that much.
See,
whenever they go Marvel does that scene where it's I think I know a guy, and it just cuts to a generic white man. Sure, super geeks like me know, oh, that's Ant-Man. I think most of the audience knows who they are until they put the costume on. So I don't think anyone cares.
Yeah, I was going to say Doctor Who certainly future-proofed itself. The recasting.
Yeah.
There's some genius. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about how this one holds up. I'm actually going to say I feel like this one, like I told you, I liked 2 better watching again. This one I seem to like a lot less for some reason. Not a lot less, but notably less, I'll say.
I think it's a cinematic masterpiece, and I won't be convinced otherwise.
I'm just coming in this weird place where I'm starting to agree with you about the whackness of 2's action sequences actually are like.
I don't think it ever hits the highs of that forest battle in 2. But I think, well, like I said, in terms of like actual logic, it doesn't hold together as well as the first 2 films. But in terms of like emotional pacing, I think it's really solid.
I know you hate it when I put it in music terms, but it's kind of like Led Zeppelin or the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They're really good bands, but like all the bands that they inspired suck. So, like you said, it's the climax of this movie is almost literally copied multiple times.
Yep.
But I think I do like Avengers better as a film.
I haven't rewatched the first Avengers in a while. The problem, I think, actually, Avengers is great up until the final battle. Yeah. My big problem with the first Avengers film is that they were absolute paper enemies. And you never felt like...
the whole final battle is just generic.
And you never feel for a second that any Avenger is in any danger.
Not really.
Whereas watching this, I do believe that one of the named Autobots could die at any moment. And every now and then it does kill one.
Yeah, that's cool. And then I think again I mentioned Winter Soldier is doing this climax yet again. In that case, I thought it worked. So yeah.
I remember really liking Winter Soldier in the theaters, and I don't think I've seen it since.
Okay.
I think that was the point where I was just like, okay, they're making too many of these for me to be rewatching them.
I think I slightly later came to that conclusion, so I did watch it a couple times.
Yeah.
Well, I spent 2 years writing a book on superhero movies, and since we finished it, I haven't been able to watch a single one.
No, I keep saying in this podcast, like just looking this closely at sci-fi films has made me like way less interested in superheroes and Star Wars. You know, the Disney.
I'll still watch them when they come out, but I've got far less to say about an Avengers movie than I have most other films that me and Matt pick up. There's a reason we don't really do many superhero films anymore, because we did Spider-Man, then we did Spider-Man 2, and by then Spider-Man 2, we were like, I've run out of stuff to say about Spider-Man on this podcast.
And the movie itself didn't really have much to talk about, as good as it is.
Well, because it is just like a really solid, good movie that just does superhero stuff.
I mean, Transformers Dark of the Moon does have more to talk about because it has all these bizarro corners that barely make sense.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I like doing podcasts about these Transformers films is because they're such a fucking mess. And like, we haven't even gotten to the messy 2 yet.
Can I just say, you've been saying all along that whole ending sequence has been ripped off in a whole bunch of movies, and you're right, but they did rip off the whole thing with Optimus Prime with the jetpack on his back from RoboCop 3.
Yeah.
Clearly, Michael Bay saw that, and unlike everyone else who watched that ending to the movie, thought that RoboCop with a jetpack was great, and he thought, I'm going to do that with a Transformer.
Well, he didn't see that, because then he would have been like, oh, you can recast some of your leads. He kind of missed that particular aspect. But Luke, what is your favorite of the Transformer films?
It probably is this one.
Okay.
As an overall film. But again, if I'm just cherry picking scenes, my favorite scene is from the second one.
Yeah, I think too, the second one has switched from being my least favorite to my favorite, because I'm like, okay, we might as well lean in on the ridiculous aspects of this franchise, which the second one does the most, I guess.
And then 4 and 5, I love how mad they are. But they're too long, man.
I can't remember anything about 4 and 5 except 4 is the one with dinosaurs, and 5's the one with, I didn't even remember Stonehenge. I just remember the Butler robot. So, I think I've seen both those like once. So
5 literally starts with King Arthur and Merlin teaming up with a transformer. Michael Bay made 3 where the studio was kind of involved, and then it's like, if it wasn't for the fact they clearly have a huge budget, you'd think he was just like away making these films in a Serbian basement or something, because it's like there's no oversight to whatever mad nonsense he wants to put in there.
No oversight can be fun though. Anyway, we will be working our way into that. I guess we'll wrap up today. Tom, can you tell them where you're at?
Sure. If people want to hear a bit more of my stuff or listen to my podcast, they can, or watch the documentary Theatres of War, they can check out everything at spyculture.com.
Okay. Luke,
if you've enjoyed this podcast, you can find us on Twitter at MLSFS143. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that stuff. And make sure you go to patreon.com/podcastia, where if you want to, you can chuck us $1 a month to help keep it online. But even if you don't, that's a great website to go and find links to all the stuff me and Matt make.
All right. Sorry, I'm just starting to realize I got up and did this podcast without drinking coffee first.
Oh, that's why I'm drinking cans of coffee.
I know. I've been
I bothered to make any myself, so I used up my last 2 cans.
I've been watching you and envious of it.
Don't you have a wife? Can't you just be like, coffee?
I could if I lived in a Michael Bay movie.
Or in the opening scene of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. The worst is still Armageddon, where he spots the asteroid and just starts psychotically screaming at his wife.
I thought
Armageddon's running in
the worst Michael Bay movie
weeks.
was Armageddon, but okay.
Armageddon is pretty bad, but the concept of space madness is really funny to me.
Oh yeah, that was great.
And we are overlooking Pearl Harbor, which I think that's got to be the worst one.
Pain and Gain, which is, although funny and interesting, like actively morally really problematic, because it's a film that glorifies some real life murderers.
No, I never even saw Pearl Harbor. It's like, what? It's 3 hours? No.
Yeah, I haven't seen Pearl Harbor because I'm a Brit and have no interest in Pearl Harbor as a historical event.
Because I was not long after Titanic, and I had taken 4 different girls to see Titanic, so I was just finished with long movies for a while.
Whoa, look at this player.
Yeah. No, it's funny. No, girls just wanted to see Titanic in 1997,
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
I wasn't even like romantically involved with all 4. It's fun to say I took 4 different girls to Titanic, so it's not quite as saucy as it sounds.
I took 4 different girls on the Titanic, but I didn't let any of them on my lifeboat.
Okay, I've been trying to sit here thinking of the perfect Nimoy line to end this with, but it's not happening. Luke, you got one?
Nimoy line.
I've been spinning my wheels for a few seconds, but I didn't drink my coffee either.
Bilbo Baggins, the bravest little hobbit of them all.
Okay, that works for me. Be like Bilbo, that's what they say. Okay.
If I'd thought in advance that I need to do that, I'd have created a version of Bilbo Baggins about Optimus Prime or something.
Oh, right. Yeah. Let me hit the non-recorder button.